The winter of 1898 came early and mean. Snow piled against the north wall of Eli and Clara's cabin until the door had to be shoveled twice a day. The Wind River froze thick enough to carry a loaded wagon, and wolves sang closer every night. Clara was heavy with their second child. Their boy, Samuel, named Quiet for the uncle he would never meet, was 6 and all legs and questions. The nights were long, the firewood short, and the money shorter. Cattle prices had crashed again. The bank in Lander sent polite letters that tasted like threats. One February dusk, a knock rattled the door. Eli opened it with the Colt in his hand, habit more than fear. A girl stood on the porch, maybe 16, coat too thin, cheeks frostbit red. Behind her, half buried in snow, lay a bay horse with a broken leg that would never mend. "Please," the girl said, teeth chattering. "My paws hurt bad. We was headin' to South Pass City. The wagon turned over 2 miles back." "Ma's with him, but he's bleeding inside, I think." Eli knew the stretch of road. Bitter Creek Canyon. Nothing there but wind and rock. Clara was already pulling on her boots and wrapping scarves around little Samuel. "You ride drum," she told the girl. "Eli and I will take the sled." They found the wagon on its side. Tongue snapped, one wheel still spinning lazy in the wind. The man, Jacob Hart, was pinned beneath a crate of mining tools. Blood soaked the snow dark. His wife Ruth knelt beside him, pressing a shawl to a gash in his belly, whispering prayers that came out white in the cold. Eli and Clara worked without many words. They levered the crate off, packed the wound with clean cloth, lifted Jacob onto the sled. Ruth walked beside it, holding her husband's hand. The girl, Lillian, rode ahead to open the gate. Inside the cabin, the fire roared higher than they could afford. They laid Jacob on Eli and Clara's own bed. Clara sent Samuel to the loft with strict orders to stay quiet and pray. Then she rolled up her sleeves the way she had the night the blacksmith's baby came, and the night she shot a man to save Eli's life. The wound was ugly. Clara cleaned it with carbolic and hot water, stitched what she could, packed it with honey and spiderweb. Jacob drifted in and out, burning with fever. Ruth sat beside him, hollow-eyed, holding his hand like it was the only real thing left in the world. For 4 days, the storm pinned them all inside the small cabin. Eli melted snow for water, fed the stock, shot a deer when the meat ran low. Lillian helped Samuel feed the stove and told him stories about California oranges to keep him from fretting. On the 5th night, Jacob woke clear-headed and asked for Clara. She came, belly round under her apron, and sat on the edge of the cot. "I ain't got money to pay you," he rasped. "Bank took the farm back in Missouri. We was heading west to start over. Thought the mines?" Clara took his hot hand. "You just breathe, Mr. Hart. That's payment enough for now." He looked past her to where Eli stood in the doorway, arms folded, face unreadable. "Your man pulled me out from under that crate," Jacob said. "I owe him my life." Eli gave a short nod. "We've all been under something heavy, one time or another." Ruth began to cry then, silent tears that had been dammed up too long. Lillian put her arms around her mother and held on. When the storm broke at last, the world was white and clean and merciless. Jacob could sit up. The wound was closing, but the bay horse was dead, the wagon ruined, and winter still had teeth. Eli stood on the porch one dawn, staring south, where the mountains disappeared into cloud. Clara came out beside him, wrapped in his coat. "They can't make South Pass like this," she said quietly. "Not with him hurt and no money." Eli rubbed the back of his neck. "Got an old line cabin up on Bitter Creek. Roof's tight. Creek runs year-round. Grass enough for a milk cow come spring. 10 acres, the railroad never claimed." Clara studied his face. "That's the last piece we own free and clear, I know." She rested her head against his shoulder. "Then it ain't ours anymore. It's theirs." That afternoon, Eli hitched the team to the big sled. He loaded the Hart's few salvaged belongings, a sack of Clara's garden seed, a side of venison, and every blanket they could spare. He put Jacob in the bed wrapped like a papoose. Ruth and Lillian climbed up beside Clara and Samuel on the seat. They reached the Bitter Creek cabin at dusk. It was smaller than Eli's place, one room and a lean-to, but the chimney drew and the door shut tight against the wind. Eli carried Jacob inside and laid him on the bunk he himself had built years ago when he first came to this country running from graves. Clara started a fire while Lillian unpacked. Ruth stood in the doorway and looked at the tiny cabin like it was a palace. "We can't take this," she whispered. "You already did," Eli said. "Papers in the table drawer. I signed it over this morning." Jacob tried to sit up. "Walker." Eli cut him off gentle. "A man pays what he can. You'll pay when you're able. Till then, you keep your family warm. That's the deal." Spring came sudden that year. The snow turned to mud overnight, and the Wind River ran bank full again. Word reached Lander that Jacob Hart had struck a small vein of color up Bitter Creek. Not enough to make a man rich, but enough to buy seed, a milk cow, and a new wagon. Ruth took in washing. Lillian taught Samuel his letters by scratching them in the dirt with a stick. One Sunday in June, a wagon rolled up the trail to Eli and Clara's place. Jacob sat on the seat, thin but upright, Ruth beside him holding a bundle wrapped in blue cloth. Lillian jumped down first and ran to Clara with a fierce hug. Inside the bundle was a baby girl, red-faced and squalling. Ruth placed her in Clara's arms. "We named her Clara Rose," she said, voice shaking, "because some names carry saving grace." Clara looked down at the tiny face, then up at Eli. His eyes were wet, though he'd swear later it was only wood smoke. That evening, they all sat on the wide porch Eli had built for sunsets. Samuel and Lillian chased fireflies. Jacob tuned a battered fiddle someone had traded him for doctoring a lame horse. The music was simple and true. When the stars came out, thick as spilled salt. Jacob played a slow waltz. Eli stood and held out his hand to Clara. She took it, belly big now with the child that would be their daughter. And they danced on the porch boards while the Wind River kept its old steady song below. Later, when the Harts had gone home under a rising moon, Eli and Clara stood together at the rail. "Thought we were giving away our last piece of ground," Eli said quietly. Clara leaned into him. "We just made the world a little bigger, that's all." He kissed the top of her head where the first silver threads had begun to show. "Some things," he said, "come back to a man richer than he gave them." And far up the ridge, in the small cabin on Bitter Creek, a new lamp burned steady against the dark. Proof that grace, like water, always finds the low places and fills them.